The storyline centers on the outsider Corey Cunningham, who develops feelings for Laurie Strode's granddaughter, as a chain of events, including encounters with Michael Myers, leads him to become a serial killer. Get ready to relive the adventure as we recap the story of horror and mystery film today, Halloween Ends, production year 2022. (2019) On Halloween evening in Haddonfield, Corey Cunningham shows up at the Allen residence to look after a boy named Jeremy while his parents are at a party. Although Mrs. Allen asks Corey to get Jeremy to bed early due to his fear from last year's Halloween event, Corey ultimately plays a horror film for him, despite the boy insisting he isn't frightened. When Corey tells Jeremy to hit the sack, he talks back to him. Corey heads to the kitchen for a bite but catches a sound. He looks into it, but Jeremy is not present. From above, Jeremy starts yelling and asking for assistance. Corey takes a knife and searches the attic, where he becomes trapped. It was a joke by Jeremy, who won't allow him to leave. Just as Jeremy's parents arrive back, Corey kicks the door hard enough to launch Jeremy over the balcony, causing his face to hit the ground below. His parents hurry to him in distress, and Mrs. Allen, noticing the knife in Corey's grip, charges him with murder. 3 years later, Laurie Strode resides with Allison, both of them continuing to cope with Karen's death. Laurie has been penning a novel regarding her experience with Michael Myers and the way Haddonfield has coped with the consequences of his recent massacre. As she drives to the hospital for work, Allison gets stopped by her former boyfriend, Officer Doug Mulaney, who still has feelings for her but also advises her to repair her muffler. Corey has been released after his acquittal and is employed at a garage junkyard. His employer, Ronald, gives him a motorcycle as a gift. Corey then bikes to the convenience store and picks up chocolate milk. But as he exits, 4 teens, Terry, Billy, Stacy, and Margot, approach him and request that he buy them beer. Corey refuses, and the teenagers then identify him as the crazy babysitter. Terry mocks Corey, pushing him to the point where he crushes the milk bottle in his grip, resulting in a serious cut. Terry takes him down due to the spilled milk, right as Laurie arrives and tells the kids to scram. Laurie assists Corey in standing up and hands him a knife to cut the tires on Terry's vehicle. Laurie brings Corey to the hospital, where Allison cares for the wound on his hand. While at Dr. Mathis's office, Corey accidentally knocks over his equipment, prompting Mathis to scold Allison to tidy up. Corey observes that she mustn't allow Mathis to speak to her in that manner. He states that he is employed at a garage, so he inspects Allison's car and resolves her issue. Allison develops an affection for Corey and asks him to accompany her. At home, both Laurie and Lindsay Wallace motivate her to seek a new relationship. Corey is depicted at home residing with his mother, Joan, who seems to be in a relationship with Ronald. She treats Corey as if he were a child and is excessively protective of him after the entire town has branded him a child murderer. He heads to work, attempting to teach Allison how to ride his motorcycle, while simultaneously observing Terry arrive with his father, who is scolding Terry to have his car repaired. Laurie visits the supermarket, where she encounters Frank Hawkins. They seem playful with each other, suggesting a shared attraction. As Laurie leaves, she encounters a woman connected to Sondra, who survived her assault by Michael, but was rendered speechless after he pierced her throat with a light and forced her to witness her husband's murder. The woman holds Laurie responsible for bringing Michael back to instill fear in the town. Allison asks Corey to join her for a Halloween party, and he arrives with a scarecrow mask, seeming to enjoy himself. He removes the mask and heads to grab a drink, where Mrs. Allen notices him. She is intoxicated and furiously insists that he intentionally killed Jeremy, prompting Corey to walk away. Allison attempts to communicate with Corey, but he abruptly leaves, believing that Allison was not assisting him by exposing him to those who view him as a murderer. While Corey is walking home, Terry and his friends see him and continue to tease him, excluding Margot, who believes they are going overboard. As Corey attempts to leave, Terry and Billy prevent him from doing so. Corey loses his temper and remarks that Terry's father dislikes him due to the way he spoke to him at the garage. Terry and Billy subsequently toss Corey off the bridge, causing him to fall unconscious before the teenagers escape. In the shadows, a hidden form, clearly Michael, pulls Corey into the underground tunnels. Corey awakens in the sewers and searches for an escape, only to be seized by the neck by Michael. While Corey fights to escape, Michael gazes into Corey's eyes, suggesting he understands that Corey has killed previously, leading him to release him. As he exits, a homeless man confronts Corey with a knife and demands that he return to the sewer to retrieve Michael's mask. Corey battles the homeless man and ultimately stabs him to death. Corey visits Allison's home to look for her and invites her to come along. He brings her to the deserted Allen house, where he describes what occurred with Jeremy. They head out for dinner, and while there, Doug approaches Allison, prompting Corey to almost confront him until Doug rejoins his friends. In the meantime, Laurie worries about their time together because she thinks she saw Michael reflected in Corey's eyes, so she heads to his house to talk with Joan. Even while showing sympathy, Joan demeans Laurie about her connection with Michael, asserting that Haddonfield selected her son to become their next boogeyman once Michael disappeared. Corey takes Allison home, and they share their initial kiss. He drives off on his motorcycle while Doug trails behind in his car. Corey makes his way back beneath the bridge towards the sewer, while Doug discovers the body of the homeless man. Corey provokes Doug and leads him into the sewer. Corey attempts to murder Doug with assistance from Michael, who appears noticeably weaker and requires Corey to restrain Doug while he stabs Doug's body multiple times. At her job, Allison feels annoyed by her co-worker Deb, who received a promotion instead of her because Mathis prefers Deb. Deb remarks on Allison, who is repeatedly linked to surviving Michael, being with the psycho babysitter, until Allison tells her to be quiet. Laurie visits the bar alongside Lindsay, and they're astonished to see Mr. Allen there. He explains to them that he doesn't feel any animosity toward Corey as his wife does, since he thinks that the residents of Haddonfield expressing hatred towards him were turning the Allens' tragedy into a personal issue. Mr. Allen mentions that he attempted to reach out to Corey and have a conversation with him, but upon looking into his eyes, he sensed that the person Corey once was has vanished, and that he is heading towards a troubling direction. Deb visits Dr. Mathis's house because they are involved in a romantic relationship. As he prepares things and she goes to get ready, she hears a commotion happening. Deb steps outside and sees Corey, in his scarecrow mask, stabbing Mathis multiple times after covering his head with a plastic bag. Michael discovers Deb, lifts her by the throat and stabs her with his knife, leaving her suspended. Corey invites Allison out once more, and they ascend to the peak of the radio station structure. They devise strategies to permanently depart from Haddonfield. As they descend, local DJ Willie the Kid discovers them. He ridicules the pair as he does on his radio program, and he warns them to go away. As Corey gets home, Joan reprimands him, slapping him and attempting to kiss him, but he pushes her away. Halloween arrives, and Corey finds himself sleeping at the Allen residence. Laurie is present and instructs him to keep his distance from Allison. He shouts at her for arranging it and refers to her as a freak show. But Laurie appears to have disappeared before Corey can notice. Corey phones Allison and states they must exit the town quickly, as he alleges that Laurie attempted to murder him. Corey goes back to the sewer to request Michael's mask, leading to a confrontation where Corey ultimately gains the upper hand and seizes the mask from Michael. Michael can still be observed ascending after Corey departs. Allison returns home to collect her belongings and has a disagreement with Laurie when she attempts to persuade her to cease. Corey etches Psycho into Terry's vehicle to provoke him into pursuing him to the junkyard. The teenagers discover Corey's motorcycle and try to attach it to their car to tow it. When Terry instructs Billy to start it up, he discovers Billy lifeless with a drumstick in his eye. Corey subsequently steers a van towards Stacy and Margot, causing them to flee and scale a fence. Margot can't move fast enough and finds herself trapped under the fence when Corey crashes into it. Stacy approaches her side and is bludgeoned to death with a tool. Terry seeks assistance from Ronald, who hands him a rifle for safety. However, when Ronald realizes it's Corey, he attempts to make Terry halt, but he gets shot in the head. Corey seizes Terry and thrusts a blowtorch into his mouth, causing Terry's face to melt away. Corey subsequently crushes Margot's head with his foot and dashes across her form. Corey then goes back to his house to fatally stab his mother before heading to the radio station, where he murders Willie's receptionist, then brutally bashes Willie's face onto the turntables, destroying his jaw and cutting out his tongue. Allison attempts to find Corey at the location he instructed, but he fails to appear and doesn't pick up his calls. Laurie attempts to reach Allison, but is unsuccessful. She subsequently dials 911 and conveys a report of a suicide. Laurie then picks up a gun and seems poised to take her own life. As Corey ascends the stairs in his home, he hears a gunfire followed by a splatter, only to discover that it's merely a pumpkin. Laurie expected this and fires at Corey, leading him to tumble down the stairs. Understanding that he will be discovered, Corey plunges a knife into his own jugular. Laurie attempts to remove the knife just as Allison arrives home, creating the impression that Laurie has killed Corey. Allison weeps and runs away, while Laurie attempts to clarify. A short while later, Michael comes back and takes his mask from Corey, who surprisingly is still alive. He struggles with Michael for the mask until Michael takes hold of his head and breaks his neck, ending Corey's life permanently. As Allison is about to leave, she receives a call from the police informing her of the suicide attempt, and she understands the situation. Laurie and Michael then engage in their ultimate confrontation, during which Michael tosses Laurie around and attempts to force her hand into a running garbage disposal. Laurie successfully takes Michael's knife and stabs his hand into a kitchen counter. She takes another knife and thrusts it through his other hand, then topples the fridge to trap his legs. Laurie takes off Michael's mask to properly see his face, which remains unseen. Recognizing him not as the boogeyman, but as an ordinary man, she cuts Michael's throat, yet he makes one final strike before Allison arrives and assists Laurie in slicing Michael's wrist, ultimately finishing off her foe. As Hawkins and the other officers arrive, they take a close look at Michael's body and have the police issue an alert. The whole community of Haddonfield comes together and trails behind Laurie, Allison, and the police to the junkyard. They toss Michael's body into a compactor, making certain he will never return, and finally putting an end to the town's terror. Allison makes amends with Laurie, admitting she understands Corey was truly malevolent in the end. She chooses to leave Haddonfield by herself, wearing her parents' wedding rings around her neck. Laurie concludes her novel by expressing that although Michael is ultimately gone, evil never truly disappears. It merely transforms into another form. Hawkins then visits her, bringing groceries, and they sit down to talk and possibly explore a relationship. The concluding scenes depict Laurie's vacant home as a subtle breathing sound echoes, with Michael's mask lying on the coffee table. And showing this story ends here. Appreciate a subscribe, and please remember to like. Thanks for watching.